As I promised you, I am back with the painted frame and fork. And like I said after I painted it yesterday, even though it looks really good right now, this finish is just not going to be as nice as a factory paint job would be. So this was an unnecessary step, but now it's time to reassemble. Even if you're not painting it, you're going to need to disassemble the whole bike and reassemble it, because you've got your bearings in your headset that need to be greased up. You need to service your bottom bracket. If it's loose ball bearing, you need to grease those. So now it's time for me to put this all back together and stop and give some tips along the way. So I just talked about greasing bearings. The first ones I'm going to do are the headset bearings. And if you're going to grease bearings, you need grease, and that's something to think about. If you've already got grease laying around, like maybe you've got some for wheel bearing for a car, that'll work just fine. You could also get like high-end grease, like this Phil Wood grease. As long as it's a good quality grease, it should work. I've heard some people use Vaseline. I'm not a fan of that, but anyway, if you don't know how to pack bearings, best thing to do, wear gloves. I usually put them right in my hand. Just get a nice glob of grease, and I put it around on the bearing, and then it's going to be messy. Sometimes I do this without gloves, but just make sure that all that grease is in there. If these were dirty or there was grit in them, then you need to clean them ahead of time. You can use water, but then you got to get all the water out, so better to use something cheap like a WD-40, something like that, or even gas if that's something you don't mind working with. But get these all greased up. It's going to be a mess, so go ahead and grease all the bearings you're going to do for the bike in the beginning or at one time, and that way you can throw these away when you're done. Alright, I was about to grease up these bottom bracket bearings, and when I picked them up, some of the balls started to fall out, and if like that. And so always check and make sure that you're not missing any bearings out of your cage. If so, you can actually, they're probably worn out, but you could put them back into the bearing cage and bend those retainers back a little bit to hold them in place. I've got new bearings around here, but again, that could be another cost if you need to add new bearings. I actually have this sealed bottom bracket. I'm going to try to use this. It's probably out of service for most people, but it's it'll work for this bike. Don't put away that grease yet, because when you install the cups on your frame, you're going to need to put grease inside the cups too, so that when you put your bearings in, besides the grease that you've put on them, there'll also be a good coating so it's not right against the metal. So grease those up real good, top and bottom. I'm installing this type of stem and fork is threadless. There's no threads on the fork tube. This just sandwiches on there or squeezes on there. Now there is a bolt in the top and usually two on the sides. The bolt in the top is to set your bearing preload or whatever you want to call it. So you tighten that down until there's no play in the fork and it turns smoothly. If it turns tight, you've gone too tight. Then these bolts are the alignment bolts, so that way you can still, even with it tight, you should still be able to hold the fork or the wheel and move this back and forth to align with your fork, and then you crank those down. So I'm going to wait, and I always wait and crank those down last, so that when the bike's on the ground, I can set the alignment. Now this bike had drop bars on it. I'm just not comfortable riding bike with drop bars, so I'm going to put a more straight bar on it. And this is going to be my look. And that's the thing, when you're redoing a bike, that'd be the best time to try something new. So let me get this installed. I've got the bar on, the stem. I put these shifters that originally came with the bike, even though they're in a weird placement. That's the only place they would fit, because they needed to fit on the bulge in the middle of the bar. Let's see if I like those or not. Kind of gives it a neat look. Coming down here, you can see the crank I put on. No special tools required to put it back on. Just got to get it torqued up. I put the derailleur on. Now for a derailleur, there is a way to set it so that it clears. You need to just clear the teeth when it shifts out, and then these adjusters tell how far in and out to go. I threw a different rear derailleur on it, something I had. I'm going to see if this works. If not, I'll put the other one on. This one just looked a little bit nicer. Now this is something I decided to try. I had these 700 by 38, which is a much taller tire. They're used, but I wanted to see if they cleared. They do clear the brakes, and they clear that sun. They do clear down in here, and the chain stays. But look at this clearance right there. I'm going to try and go for it because I like a lot more tire. Now I'm going to move on and put the front back together. This is the front wheel and tire. This is a good reason. This one's the one that was holding air. This is a good reason to go ahead and take the tire off just to see, because even though it was holding air, this thing is completely full of dirt. Full of dirt. And though it was holding air, once I started riding on this, some of these grains of dirt and sand would have torn through the tube and left you stranded. So I got to clean this out now. The other one also had the rim strip, this little piece of rubber that goes down in, and it protects the tube from the back side of the spoke nipples. The other one was torn all to pieces and had to replace that. I've got some rim tape. Some people just put electric tape or duct tape on them. I prefer to use the proper rim tape or a rubber rim strip, but that's also something to check, something that could add money and time to your rebuild. Alright, the front wheel actually fit pretty well. The rim strip inside this tire was fine. I had these grips laying around. Now grips, you can get grips for $5 up to $100. So these were just some I had new that I bought from porkchopbmx.com. Like I said, I used the original shifters, and these are the original housings. Now that's another cost that I'm avoiding by just using the original ones. Knowing that the cables were not stuck in here helped me know it would be okay, but I'm gonna have to put new inner cables in, and I have those, but inner cables, that would add more money because the cables are rusted up so bad. But now I have to install the cables, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Also, I decided that I'm going to run a rear brake and no front brake just to clean up the look a little bit. Even though most of your braking is on the front, hopefully it'll be okay. If not, I can add it later. So here's the finished bike. The rear derailleur worked great. Shifts very smooth. I did find a new chain in my shop. I used a different crank set and a sealed bottom bracket that I had laying around. All new cables, new bottle cage bolts. The outer housings I kept the same, like I said. New brake lever, new grips, same shifters. This is a saddle I bought and tried on another bike. I really didn't like it. It's comfortable, but you slide around too much. Alloy seat post. Brakes are the same. Bigger tires. I just took it for a ride, and it rides. Really surprising. It's amazing. It's smooth. It shifts. Felt fast, and I'm not even in high gear. So here's the question. Was this worth it? If I had to buy the parts that I put on this bike just to get it riding, not the paint, not the grips, just refreshed it, tires and tubes, inner cables, chain, saddle. I mean, you're into this just in parts up to $80. Now, like I said, this originally was a $100 eBay bicycle. So would this bike be worth it to put this time and money into? I don't know. For me, it was just to make this video. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from working on their bikes or fixing up old bikes. A lot of people get too deep, put too much money into a bike that they shouldn't be putting money in. Ideally, if I was doing this for myself and not for a video, I wouldn't have done it to this bike. I would have held out for a name brand bike, but this one's pretty decent, and it's gonna be a nice bike whether I keep it or I pass it along to someone else. So I'll try to add up and figure out the cost and put that in the description below with a list of not necessarily where to get it, because I would prefer you go to a local bike shop. And if you don't have one, there's so many places online with so many different prices I couldn't even begin. So I'm going to put some average prices down in the description below so that you can get an idea of how much it costs. Also, skill, the tools that you need, the ancillary items like shop rags and grease, things like that. So, like I said, for a cheap bike like this one was, probably not worth the time, because at about $80 in, before you add on stuff to personalize it and things like that, you're very close to finding a used bike that's probably ready to go. So this one's up to you. Up to you to decide. Tell me what you think. Was it worth it fixing up this bike, or should I have just thrown it in the trash? Comment down below and let me know. You know, I just looked at my stats the other day. Most of you who are watching are not subscribers. Please subscribe. That'll help me know that I'm doing the right thing by keeping on making these videos. If you have an idea for videos to come, let me know. But meanwhile, give me a thumbs up and keep riding, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.